Sorry I'm late, but I brought you a beer.
No worries, thanks. So, I'm trying to get this to work. Aha! There we go. So, no, it's not yet. It's only the inside one. The outside one didn't switch. This is normal. I'm gonna put this one back because we need this to run in sync. Otherwise, it's gonna.
Oh, now that one's.
Okay, put them all on the start because it reacted to the button.
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah, we're good. Almost.
Okay.
There, stop clicking. Okay.
I'll come in again.
No, there's no need. Hey, Paul. It's good to see you
Hey,
again.
Nice to see you, Vincent. It's
likewise.
been so long. I'm glad you could meet with me, though. I have some questions I want to ask you.
Excellent. Fire away.
All right. Well, you know that I work at Alcatel. Actually, I made a slide.
Oh,
so
great.
I work at Alcatel, and we currently, this, by the way, as an aside to the rest of the people in the cafe, this is about 15, 20 years ago. It's not right now. ADSL is not the cool new thing. It's kind of old. So, Alcatel is the leading company for ADSL, and we have this old automation framework that tests ADSL. It's crap, but it works. And what the problem is we're going to, here we go, to VDSL, which stands for V, Digital Subscriber Loop. And there's no overlap with this automation, so we have the opportunity to start fresh. As I said, this was crap. It worked, but it was really cumbersome, unmaintainable. But we have a more complicated technology. We have more switches, more profiles. The profile for VDSL has 120 variables that you can configure. It's insane. Anyway, we have data generators, we have attenuators, we have noise generators, our switch, everything, and we get to start from scratch. Okay. And I knew that you were an automation guru.
Am I?
I don't know. We'll find out. And I wanted to have you give me some advice so that we could get the right automation in place.
We can do that. And is the hardware included in testing?
It is. So Alcatel makes the hardware. We make the chips, all but one chip, but that's irrelevant. And then the firmware and the software. So all of it's included. The test equipment, all of it's right there. We need our setups, modems. It's all. We don't make the modem, but we have to talk to the modem.
Well, excellent, because if you're starting out fresh, that means you have a chance to try and do it better this time.
Exactly.
So I figured I might give you some principles based on the experience that I have, and hopefully they'll serve you.
Sounds
you can
good.
Use them.
My clicker's over there, so you're going to have to do my clicks.
Well, first thing I want to be talking about is I think you should really try and isolate your test cases. To make sure that they are independent and they don't depend on each other. You don't want to be able to only execute test case B when test case A has already run. You want to be able to run them in any order or any specific set. If you link them together, it's going to turn into spaghetti, and debugging is going to be a nightmare.
Okay. And if I have them so they can be executed in any order, then I could focus and say, hey, I only want tests 1, 5, and 8, and it won't matter, so I can execute more quickly. That's great. I think that would. I think that's going to dramatically assist in how we can write our automation. So
I hope so. Yeah,
that's great.
And that organization that you need, that's really important to also keep your test set agile. You don't want to run everything all the time.
No, that sounds like a bad idea.
All right. Second thing you might want to do is keep your environment clean. What you don't want if you automate is that stuff from previous test cases remains present and with the potential to contaminate your test cases. Also, when it fails, and all the test data is still in the environment, it's going to be really hard to sift through it. So making sure that you keep your environment under control is going to be really helpful.
Okay. We can erase our database if we think it's going to be in a bad situation. The switch definitely has the capacity to erase the database, so we could probably do that to keep it clean.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah?
I think this is good.
All right.
I can work with this.
Something else that I think about and that I've seen quite a bit in practice is try to make sure that each test tests one thing. Because if you have...
Hold on.
Yeah?
That conflicts with the first principle.
Does it?
It does. If one test tests one thing, but I can do my tests in any order, the test has to do everything it needs to get up to where it's testing. So for it to be independent, it has to do a bunch of setup to get to the end. So to be able to run them in any order, it needs to be self-contained. So I'm going to have to configure the connection. I'm going to have to configure all the test equipment and then run my test. But if one test tests one thing, then I'm doing a bunch of that.
No, but it's different. You want to be able to run them in every possible order, but you want to make sure that when one test, you want to make sure that you don't have the situation where one test, for instance, tests, 10 things, and the third one fails, and it won't test the other things at all.
Okay, well, how am I going to get it so that I can configure the switch up to the point where I'm running my test, because I need it to do a bunch of tests to get to my test, so I'm not testing one thing?
Well, that's a great question, and you're going to have to try and find a way to do configuration of all the hardware as fast as you can, because you want those routes as short as you can get them.
So I can configure it in like shortcut ways to get it set up, so then I run my test.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, we can probably figure that out.
Good questions. And finally, let's end.
There's more?
Yeah, I'll give you one more.
Fantastic.
And the fourth thing that I usually am really strict in is try to not do chain testing, because chain testing.
Wait.
Yeah.
You just said one test tests one thing.
Yeah.
And now you're saying don't do chain testing. How is that at all different? Like, if I'm doing one test tests one thing, and then I'm not chaining a bunch of tests together, it's the same principle.
It's a semantic thing. We call chain testing where you test stuff that belongs to other teams as well. So where you create dependencies with software run by other teams, and you don't want to set those up, because those dependencies are going to...
Are you talking about end-to-end testing?
Okay, end-to-end testing, that's also how you could call it. Sure, let's do that.
Okay.
So end-to-end testing is not what you want, because the politics included in there is awful, and you want to stop those out as much as you can, so you remain independent in testing. Okay. Especially when you're dealing with telecom, you want to keep it short and sweet.
So each team is going to write their own software to test their own thing, and nobody's going to test anything on either side.
Well, if you do that, make it a special event where you run a few test cases through the entire chain, as we say, but preferably as little as possible.
Okay, now you just said the thou shall not do end-to-end, and now you said I could. So what is it?
If necessary, but as little as possible. Please don't do it.
So don't do it.
Yeah, don't do it.
Okay.
Yeah?
All right. So I think I got this. Perfect. Thanks, man.
You're welcome.
I'll let you know how it goes.
I'm really curious. See you next time.
See you later. Scene 11. Who changed the font?
The font wasn't included.
It's supposed to be Roman numeral 1 eyes. Those of you in the cafe, it's not scene 11. You didn't miss 10 scenes.
So,
hey, Vincent.
Hey, Paul.
Nice
Good
to see you again. Hey, it's been 2 years, man.
It's been too long.
Yeah. Whew.
So, how did it go?
Well, actually, I made a slide.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, well, let's see it.
Yeah. So the new situation isn't quite as good as you think it's going to be, I'm sure. We followed your principles. Mm-hmm. Our runtime is 47 hours to do our daily automation.
47?
Yeah. So the only way that we could do it was, and I'm not making this up, we have 3 separate systems. Each one has multiple 100,000 euros of cost in it to be able to run overnight. so that in the morning, the automation team can check that the failures were. So we have 3 multi-$100,000,
Dear Lord.
100,000 euro setups.
Now I'm going to start drinking.
Yeah. 20% failure rate. It's insane. So if we rerun it, it's still around 20%, but it's a different 20%. So we have flaky tests all over the place.
Okay.
The amount that we've reset it, we reset the switch 17 times because we were talking about controlling the environment.
Indeed.
And each reset, every time we reset the switch, it takes 5 to 7 minutes to reboot and come back up. And then, so it takes that when we erase the database, then we assign an IP address and we have to reboot it again. And then we have to configure. It takes at least 25 minutes every time we erase the database. So out of this 47 hours, about 9 hours or 8.5 hours is just resetting the node. And our customers never reset their switch. We have customers who've run for 3 years and they never reset the switch. So we're not even testing the way our customers do.
That's interesting. But are you sure you implemented the principles correctly?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sure the principles were not complex, Vincent. We isolated our test cases. Mm-hmm. We made sure that we had control of the environment. We had one test testing one thing, and we didn't do any chain testing.
Okay. No end-to-end testing, you mean?
No end-to-end testing is what I meant.
All right. That's interesting.
It's been 2 years, but I still remember your stupid name for end-to-end testing.
Okay, that's surprising. So I really wonder what went wrong.
Well, I believe what went wrong was the principles that you suggested that we use. They've clearly driven us down the wrong path. You're controlling the environment is killing 8.5 hours every night.
Okay, but I mean, I've been in the industry for 17 years now, and I've used these countless times. So there must be something else that went wrong.
No, I'm pretty sure the problem was the principles because
Okay.
When we had we run a whole bunch of setup and configuration, and we get like 10 minutes in and we do our test, and then we tear it all down and rip it down, and then the next test does the same thing, goes a little bit further, and then does another test.
Okay.
That's not going to work. So what I'm going to try, and I just want to let you know this. So what I'm going to do is actually probably the exact opposite of your principles. I'm going to chain test, end-to-end testing. I'm going to get like 8 or 9, maybe 10 end-to-end scenarios, and I'm just going to test as I go. I'm going to build it, configure it, and then set up the connections, and then configure it, and do all the testing of the profiles, and then I'm going to do the next thing, and it's just going to be one situation, and then, excuse me, good beer. When we get to the end, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tear that all down, and then we're going to do the next scenario, and we're going to test it that way. I bet you that's going to work.
I'd be really curious to hear if that works, but great, let's meet up in a while, and I'd be very interested to hear if it was successful.
I will let you know.
Yes, please. See you later. Okay, it's going to skip ahead like really fast now to scene 111.
111.
So, 3 months later.
3
Paul,
months later. Hey, Vincent, nice to see you. It's
Good
only been 3
you.
months. Just a fist bump.
So how did it go?
It went phenomenally well.
Really?
I made a slide.
Oh, of course you did. There we go.
Our execution time is down to 2.5 hours.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. And we've increased our test coverage.
Oh, wow.
Because the way we did it before is all of the configurations, they were all the exact same to get to the test. But now that we have 9 or 10 different scenarios, we get to change how we do it, and they're simulating different customer environments. It's working out amazingly well. We do almost no repetition because the setup to get to the test isn't the same. We just keep building on it. So we've done this whole end-to-end thing, and it's been so successful for us. So much easier.
What if it fails along the way?
If it fails along the way, we just put a breakpoint there and we look at what's happened as we go. We have excellent logging because we know how to code. So we code into our logging and into the log, and then we have a great log viewing tool where we can just highlight the failures and it'll show us exactly what went wrong. It's fantastic.
Okay. Interesting.
So the debugging, super easy. The responsibility, that was your problem with end-to-end testing, so we fixed that by having a dedicated team. It's only a small team, it's like 3 or 4 people based in India, but they're the ones who are responsible for writing the end-to-end automation. And when something goes wrong, they raise the defect and they either fix the automation or raise the defect against the team.
Okay.
So it was fantastic.
And all this works?
It works great. Our coverage has increased. Our execution time is down. Easier debugging. It's fantastic.
Wow. I'm really curious. So that must mean that the principles that I gave you, even though they always worked for me, they didn't work for you.
The principles you gave me just, you're right, didn't work. Hey, you know what? Maybe principles that work in one situation don't always work in another situation.
I think you're onto something.
Yeah.
So maybe we shouldn't blindly follow all these principles.
It definitely cost me 3 years of my frickin' life.
But you learned a lot.
I did. I learned enough to do a keynote.
There we go. So what do you suggest? How can we approach this?
Well, I think we still need to consider, maybe we shouldn't call them principles, maybe we should call them heuristics.
Ooh, how would you define heuristics?
That's a great question. A heuristic is a fallible method for solving a problem or making a decision.
That makes sense.
That's Cohen's definition, by the way.
Okay. He sounds smart.
Yes. Michael Bolton would be upset if I didn't quote that it was Cohen who said that. Okay. Anyway, so there we go. We should consider the principles, but also consider whether we're applying them or perhaps applying the opposite of them in the given situation.
And also sometimes assume that they will fail.
Exactly.
All right. Well, it's been a learning journey together. So.
And all right. There we go.
But now that we've gone through all the principles, we are actually quite...
all the principles. We only did 4.
Yeah, we did 4. But we are also quite curious how this works with some of your principles. And actually, before, quite a long time ago, Paul asked a question on Slack and got a bunch of principles in return.
I did, including one from Joao.
Oh, yeah, from Joao.
Joao, it's right here.
He said you should always...
Always.
You should always.
He did say always.
It did say. I checked an hour ago, it did.
Yeah.
Always co-locate your automation code with the code of the software you're testing. So that's interesting. What do you think?
I'm going to go to this side.
Oh, really? Why?
Well, the one thing, the word always, I have a saying which is never use absolutes, always use safety language.
Yeah, exactly.
So I find it difficult for any principle to be applied across the board unilaterally in every situation. But if I'm looking at, let's say, a team that does end-to-end automation, they may not be working in the same language. There's no reason for them to be in the same repository as the developers, and maybe they just want to have their own thing or be separate. It just doesn't make sense to me that you would always need to co-locate the code. So what do you think?
Well, I'm going to stay on this side because I think it can make sense in a way that if you store your automation code in the same repository as the code of the software you're testing, they always stay aligned with versions. So if you roll back a few versions to test something that you wanted to test in the past because of a production defect or anything, your automation framework automatically aligns because it was stored at the same moment. And in that sense, I think it's actually a sensible thing to do.
Or you could just have a configuration file that mentions what version you're running and write your code in a clever way that would handle all the versions. But yes,
that's way harder.
I can see that potentially you would be okay with that sometimes. But again, maybe not
Sometimes.
all the time.
So that's a decent heuristic.
It is a good heuristic.
Maybe-
Should we co-locate the automation code with the development code?
And that's something you talk about. So maybe we need another one from the audience?
We
We're
need
up for that?
Do we have a cube? We
Yeah,
do.
we have a
Yes.
You can throw it.
Does anybody else? Bart!
Try to do the shift left before you go into end-to-end.
Try to do the...
But he didn't
Are
use
we- is
always
this
or
automation?
never, so.
Yes, I try to not go into always and never and stuff like that. I
get
just
it.
heard that that's not a good thing. So always try to do a shift left and test earlier before you start pushing tests into the end-to-end scenarios.
Okay, I'm going to go this side.
Interesting.
I think it really depends on the situation. If you enter a project that's been running for years, doing shift left is really hard, and it might make more sense to move the other way first, to try and get some stuff under coverage. So I don't necessarily think that in such a situation it will work. And you?
Well, I'm going to go over here
Really?
and say it does make sense that you want to make sure that the basic unit tests are passing before you're spending too much time and effort. Actually, I'm going to go for a quiz. How many people have written automation just in general? Lots. Perfect.
Oh, excellent.
How many of you have written automation before the code was ready that you were writing automation against? And now keep your hands up. How many of you have never had to change your code because the code that you were writing your automation against was exactly what you thought, and you just got to keep your code exactly as it... You are a liar, Anne. I have honestly, in 29 years, yes, I'm old, in 29 years of doing testing and automation, I have never been able to pre-write automation that I haven't had to at least tweak a little bit once the code is available, because it's never what I'm expecting. It's probably never what the product owner is expecting either, but that's a different story. So I would agree with Bart that sometimes you want to make sure that the software is being delivered as it's going to be delivered, and then you would go to the end-to-end testing.
Okay.
Give me another one. Anne. We'll cheat. We'll go to the spouse.
So I want to defend myself a little bit.
I didn't lie.
I didn't lie. We just have a very, very non-testable application, which is black box. So the controls of it and its backend, the control.
There you go.
stays the
So you
same.
can join your husband on the dark side.
But I
can.
actually do have a principle for you.
Okay.
Always keep your tests, your regression tests, under 1 hour runtime.
Oh, that's easy.
Yeah, no, fuck you. I'm going over here. If your system is complex enough, it's keeping it under an hour. Now, it depends on what we're... sorry, that's your side. Stop. It doesn't make sense to keep it under... It doesn't make sense to keep it under an hour all the time, because sometimes you have a complex system and maybe you don't have a daily, maybe you have a weekly automation that you run that takes 4 or 5 hours or 10 hours. But on a daily side, it might make sense to keep it under an hour. Anyway, go ahead.
So you're doing my side as well?
I just wanted to, I was arguing with myself, so I thought I'd make it clear.
No, I think that if you generate automated feedback, you want it to be fast. And one of the big advantages is that you can include it in a pipeline, and nobody wants a pipeline that runs for a bloody 47 hours. So
47 was a long time.
Yeah, but
by the
even
way,
if
all
it's-
those numbers are not made up. Those are actual numbers from a life I lived back in early 2000s.
I know of a current set at the Dutch tax services that runs in 26 hours. So these things still happen.
That's a little more than an hour. Maybe if you ran in an untestable product that was black box, maybe then you could keep it under an hour.
I'm not going to say always, but try it.
Never say always.
Yeah, I will never say that. try to keep test failures easily deductible. Like, if a test fails, it should be really easy to find the root cause for that, which most of the time means push the test down the pyramid, make it like a small thing.
This is a really long principle. Wow.
I haven't thought about
The
that.
longer you speak, the more specific it becomes, and Vincent and I are both going to be standing over on this side saying no. Let's
Pay attention to what a failed test means.
Ooh, yeah. I'm not going to argue with that.
No, me neither. That's,
No, yeah.
Why would you not pay attention to what a failed test means?
Yeah, one of the...
I thought it's both stand over here. I like that one. But, okay, we have to think of when would I pay attention to what a failed test.
I think that's a good idea.
Is that really a principle, though? If you're don't ignore test failures, isn't that like just a generic tester thing?
Yeah, I think ignoring...
Here, clarify, because that's what I got out of it.
Ignoring test failures is always bad.
That's not what I mean. I mean, sometimes you have a test that runs for 10 minutes, and if it fails, nobody has a clue what might have gone wrong, because you're testing so much code that you have like 10 different causes for that test to fail.
Sure.
So that's bad, in my opinion.
Ah. Use the mic? I have a mic.
Well, it does sound like if that's the case, your tests are way too large, and maybe you need smaller test cases. So I think...
So which side are you on? That side?
No, I agree. I think...
Oh, well, I'm going to go over here then.
I think that's a good idea, to try and keep your tests smaller.
Of course you do. You
Yes, one
screwed
of my
me up with
principles.
your stupid one test, one thing. All you need to rectify that is good logging. It doesn't matter if I'm testing 10 things in my one test. If I'm logging what's going on and making note of what the configurations are and what's happening in a positive way and a negative way, I don't care if it fails because I have the log to show what went wrong. Ha-ha! How long does it take you to deduct that? To deduce it? To what? To deduce it? Are you... Wait, what language are we speaking? Here.
How long does it take you to check the logs, see where the failure was, and so on and so forth? So my point is, don't waste too much time.
As I mentioned, and again, I'm not kidding, the logging system that I had in that other, it was great. You bring up the whole log it was written in Tickle TK. Anybody? No? Oh, yes! Woo! Tickle TK rules for the three of us. Anyway, we had a TK viewer that we could pull in the whole log. You literally just collect fail, and it shows you the failure. Oh, it was sweet. And I'm not kidding. I worked on this since 1995 to about 2007, and it was the best automation environment I've ever worked in until about 2 years ago. But it was really good. Anyway, you need to have the ability to figure out where the failures are quickly. Just having it all logged and making it a big linear line of mess doesn't help you.
All right. Hey, Paul, I think we're going to move on.
Are we?
Are we?
No, we have until 6 for our talk. So we have 10 more minutes. And Richard Bradshaw, the Richard Bradshaw, has his hand up.
Okay.
He's also British, so he can only hit things with his feet. So...
All right. What shall we pick? Testing expertise over coding expertise.
Ooh! Quick, before Vincent takes it. Oh, you bastards!
Yeah? Okay, I'll move to the other side.
I agree. Also over language expertise. If you can code well in one language, except for JavaScript, because JavaScript is ass. If you can code properly in one language, it shouldn't be too hard to be able to code in others. And I agree, testing expertise is much harder to come by than coding expertise. So finding a good tester who can code is much easier than finding a good coder who can test. So yes, Richard.
Well, as working at a company who is desperately in need of automation specialists, I would really like to see some more testers with coding expertise. So that's why I'm on the hell side.
Ah. So you're saying you can't find good testers with coding?
No, because if they can code well, they get snatched up by our development department.
There we go. Rick.
Never put automation in an environment that has live connections.
Your choice. I grabbed the last one from you. Pick one.
No, I'm going to disagree. I think there can be sense in including automation in an environment with live connections. You will have more dependencies to manage, so it can make it more complex. But sometimes, especially when you're dealing with, for instance, package software, you don't have the control to sever or change or influence the connections, and then it makes sense to just add it there. You know, SAP, Siebel, those sort of systems, I see it deployed all the time with the live connections. Definitely not my favorite project, but sometimes it's the only thing that you can do.
Working at a company that recently disabled the email server on their test environment because we sent test emails to actual customers, I agree with you. It happened. 6 customers got notifications that their insurance policies had been canceled. Oops. Thankfully, the policy did not match their number, so they didn't completely, or the license plate or anything. It was just, your policy's been canceled. They're looking going, that's not my vehicle. What? So they phoned us and said, why did I get something saying a vehicle I didn't own? So it wasn't horrible, but it was horrible.
I once had an automation specialist testing on such a system suddenly see money deducted from their account for a phone connection that they ordered on the testing system. That was a fun call to the help desk. What account number? Yeah, this one, but it's on your testing system. It's not in production. Yes, but I'm searching for that. I can't find it. No, it's because it's on the... That was horrible. It took him 3 months to get the money back.
Wow.
So in that sense...
There you go. Stay on the hell. Oh no, you just joined me on the line.
I'm
no, you did.
That.
You joined me. I'm just pointing that out.
It's a question, not a principle. Why not combine both? I mean, you were talking about end-to-end, and you were talking about isolated.
We're getting to that.
Okay.
I'd like to ask about one of the most well-known principles, and that's testing pyramid.
Oh fuck. I mean, is this on? Hello. What about it? Do we use it? The testing pyramid is good. I don't care. I can argue either side. Pick one. I don't care.
I also really, it's a model. And if the model helps you in having a sensible discussion, it's fine. If you use it as law, it's not fine. So, and that's the thing with models. You can use them for many different things. Use them for the discussions, and I agree with a lot of them.
And can we stop calling it the testing pyramid and maybe call it the automation pyramid?
The automation pyramid.
Because it's... Thank you. That was the lamest round of applause I think I've ever heard. But, yeah, it was good. It was great. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Oh.
You have to automate all of your tests.
Oh, 100% automation. I think we're both stuck here.
Yeah, there's no way I'm getting out of here. No, never do that.
Yeah, we actually have a heuristic in a bit that talks about that. That is universally a horrible idea. Actually, that's not true. Hold on. Okay. If you have a simple system that has limited capacity for inputs and outputs, no users actually will touch it directly, you can probably get away with 100% automation. But as soon as you add a user input, users do the dumbest frickin' things that you can ever imagine. And no user would do that just means no user that I thought of that I liked would do that on purpose. Last one. We've already... Okay, go ahead, Joe.
Speaking of coverage, usually
Usually, well done, well done.
The interesting thing about coverage, it's what's not covered.
So how's that?
Is that an automation principle? That's just a
statement.
That's a statement on. I agree. Yes.
Yeah, I also agree.
You've already talked. Who hasn't talked?
Was the last one, right? Or
whoever it ends up with, it's a fight. Oh, nobody catches it.
Yeah. So automation verification, result verification, we should limit to certain duration. Whether it's a 15 minutes, 30 minutes per day, because it's too much time loss.
So you limit the amount of time the verification takes?
Yes. It has to be limited. Otherwise, you need to look into your test.
So you need to limit the length of time your automation takes?
No, result verification.
The verification only.
Verification. Result verification. So let's say 10,000 tests are running.
Yeah.
We should not waste maybe 30 minutes or more for analyzing and
okay. The analyzing the results needs to be under a certain amount of time, and the time that you're suggesting is
15 minutes or max 30 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Can you get it back here? Your beer's there, by the way.
I know, you didn't kick it.
You or me? Who's picking first?
I am gonna go to disagree. Because if it's needed, it's needed. I don't think it really matters.
That's what I was going to say.
I mean, there's always reason to optimize, but I wouldn't
are you
connect
coming over here?
A rule to it. No.
No?
No.
Yeah, so why would I agree with that? I really like what you said. It completely depends on what's needed, because if you have a catastrophic failure, but it takes you 31 minutes to analyze it, it's going to take, or 3 hours for that matter. It depends on the severity of the issue. But I would say, on the agreeing side, if it is consistently taking you a lot of time, then you need to improve your logging and your ability to be able to analyze it. And if the analysis is taking too long, then you have a different root problem, not the quality of your code, it's the quality of the logging of your automation.
All right.
We have 2 minutes left, but that's fine. We can move on. It's up to you.
Yeah?
I don't care.
No, we move on.
We move on.
I think what all this shows is it's always it depends, right? We already knew that, but these principles very clearly show it. So that's why we started. Yeah, it's not. No.
Yours isn't working? Let me try.
There you go.
I win. Hey, there we go.
Much better to talk about heuristics, and we are just going to go over a few, because often I hear, should we, do manual testing, or should we automate everything? And I think the "or" part is quite ridiculous here. So what's actually supposed to be there? Can I have a click? Oh yeah, you inserted the really long animation here.
I did. It's the easing into the happy balance thing. Trying to do everything with exploratory testing or people testing doesn't really make sense. Automating everything, we've seen how that works. Actually, I told a story in my tutorial today of a friend of mine in Sweden who worked at a company that made web pages, and they had a rush job that they had to put the sale on one of their customers' websites, so they did it, and they ran the automation, it passed 100%, and they pushed it live, and the phone rang almost immediately saying, "Where the hell's our web page? It's gone, you've deleted our web page." And they said, "Well, what do you mean?" They said, "Go to our web page, it's gone." And they went to the web page, and it was gone. And then they looked, and it was there, but it was gone. And they had made a catastrophic error, and it was rendering in 1 pixel. But because the automation looks for the HTML was all there, you just couldn't see it or use it, but the automation passed perfectly because it could enter text into the hidden text boxes, but a human couldn't use it at all. So automating everything, they thought, it's a minor change, or just adding the sale, what could go wrong, except for a typo that caused it to render in a single pixel. And so they had everything automated. They thought it was good. All they had to do was have one human look at it for less than a second and go, "This isn't right. It's gone." So there we go. You want to, and this is actually we were talking, for the automation side, you want to focus on the lower level things, APIs and lower. And for the humans, I'm not saying you can't do both. You can have a human do API testing through Postman and stuff. But on the exploratory side, having the humans focusing on the user interface, because a human can look at a web page and determine far more about that web page in just a few seconds than automation can, because automation can only check what it's coded for, and the effort to code all of the things that the automation needs to look at is not really, usually, not worth the return on investment. My clicker works, yours doesn't.
I'm perfectly fine with that.
Okay.
So
my beer is way over here.
That one came along during our little play. If you have an environment, do you want to always keep it clean and reset it frequently, or don't do things your clients aren't doing?
Right.
Well, again,
this is going to shock everybody. Oh, look!
It really depends.
It does.
One of the reasons when you can very easily keep it clean, if that process, for instance, is really quick. In Paul's situation, where it takes bloody half an hour to do it, that might not make a lot of sense. I've had situations where running a simple database reset script would take 3 seconds, and then it could make sense to really keep all your stuff isolated.
Right, and we've seen that in many of the projects I've been in, erasing the database and then getting it set back up so it's ready for future testing, further testing, it just takes too long, it's too cumbersome, and you're no longer testing the way the system is going to be used when you're out in the wild.
So, did one tests one thing?
We're on the wrong side. Get over into your stupid one test one thing side.
It was actually suggested by somebody else when we asked the people on Slack.
We did.
Yeah.
We did.
So this also really depends. If you're looking at UI testing, often it does make more sense to include a lot of stuff in it because it's slow as hell. So you don't want to go through all that startup every time because it's going to give you a ton of overhead, and it does make sense to include a lot of stuff in it. Please don't, if the business asks you, but we want to be sure that the form looks right, don't add that stuff. It's the moment the question starts with, it has to look, don't do that. But going through an entire process, include as much as you can, and then you will be on that side.
So the one big difference between Vincent's experience and mine is, and at 3 separate companies now, I've done the big end-to-end few scenarios that go end-to-end. I did it at Alcatel, I did it at Saks off 5th Avenue, and I did it at Metadata. And at all 3 of those places, we had a dedicated automation team which solved the problem of nobody taking ownership of the end-to-end test, that if I wrote the test and it fails in that area, who's going to fix the test, who's going to report the bug? So we, in each case, had, again, it was small, 3 or 4 people, of a dedicated team, that when you have that dedicated team, it's a lot easier to cross lines of who owns the responsibility of getting it fixed. You just need the agreement amongst the development teams that when you get a bug from the automation team, that it goes into your backlog is a pretty high priority.
And I love this one. How often should we test? The frequency of testing is a great dial to turn on when you want to make testing more efficient. Too often clients tell me, we want to test as often as possible, have nightly runs, and we want to know the quality at every single point in time. Do you really? Because often there's no need to do so. And what you see with these regular runs is that people become accustomed to them, and you get flooded with log files every morning, and after a while it's like, there's always 4 test cases failing, and they didn't notice that the 4 failing test cases swapped, and now it's suddenly a really important one.
That's a different principle, though. That one's all, the pipeline must always be green principle.
Yeah, and we're not going to go into that one, but testing that many times, there's just no point. It's very important to make sure that you don't test too much as well, because it's just a lot of work, it's a lot of waste. I've seen companies running nightly tests, including in the weekend. That's just wasteful.
And comes as a shock to nobody, when I was at Alcatel, we ran nightly tests. But We definitely didn't do it every commit. We've already covered off. It took 2.5 hours for our automation to run. That would be very few commits that would happen in a day if you had to wait 2.5 hours between commits. But we also, we did have an expanded set of automation that we could run, not necessarily once per release, but maybe once a week, once a month, that was a longer, more detailed set of tests. And so having a variation of this runs every commit and it runs in 5 or 10 minutes, down to this runs maybe once a release, that takes a day. I don't know how long automation would take if you ran it. We didn't have any once per release. We had once a week stuff that took about 6 hours.
All right. So we've talked a lot about heuristics. We hope you learned a thing, and I think the most important part about heuristics is talk about them. You know, don't just select your own set of heuristics and apply them without involving your team. This stuff, the balance, the skills there is meant to be talked about, and I hope we gave you lots of talking points with your team. And thank you for your attention.